So I get this question all the time, and that is, I want to invest in real estate, but what should I do? What do I buy? They're asking, should I buy a single family house and just rent that out? Or should I buy a multifamily and do the same with that? I'm not sure which way to go. So in this video, I'm going to kind of go over the pros and the cons for each single family and multifamily properties. And then by the end, you'll be able to decide on yourself which one is best for you and which one actually fits the avenue of investing that you want to go down and explore. Hi and welcome. My name is Moynihan. I'm a real estate agent and investor based out of Keene, New Hampshire. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest around the area, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to assist you. Or if you just have any questions about real estate investing, feel free to drop them in the comments below or just shoot me a DM, a text, whatever works for you. And if you want to kind of follow my more up-to-date, everyday kind of stuff, feel free to follow my Instagram. I post there every day, especially all my stories, kind of seeing what my day-to-day is. And feel free to go there. And if at any point in this video I provide enough value to deserve a like, I'd greatly appreciate that. But without further ado, let's get right into the differences between single family and multifamily real estate investing. So before we dive too deep into the subject, I just want to clarify one little thing, and that is when I'm referring to multifamily properties, I'm referring to small multifamily properties. So anything between 2 to 4 units. The reason being is because once you get above five units or more, it's considered a commercial property. I personally haven't had any experience on my own in commercial real estate with investing on those terms. So I'm kind of excluding that. I'm just talking about a single family property versus a small multi being the 2 to 4 units. So just keep that in mind when I go through this. And one more thing I want to mention is some of this may apply to you, some of it may not. This video could be finding people who are buying their first house ever. So those benefits might be a little bit different than somebody who already has a single family house and is strictly just looking to purchase another home as an investment property versus actually living in the property. So just those are the two clarifications I want to make. So let's dive right into the pros and the cons of each single family and multifamily real estate. So starting with single family, the biggest pro you have on this is inventory. It's everywhere. You're going to be able to find deals everywhere because people are always selling single family houses. No matter what market you're in, I bet if you look at the difference between single family and multifamily, there's going to be a ton more single family listings than there is multifamily listings. It's just a numbers game. So that is a big pro when you're looking there. And along the same lines as inventory is, one, you're going to have more inventory. Two, the price is probably going to be lower than getting into a multifamily. So depending on your market again. So depending on your market, you might be able to get into the house for cheaper than if you were to look at a multifamily property. Another pro for single families is the actual type of tenant you're going to draw in. You're going to probably find someone who's going to be a really good, stable tenant that's going to be able to stay there a long time. So the one thing that's really nice about renting a single family house is the tenant who's living there looks at it as their single family house. So you can literally lay all the utilities and all the expenses onto the person who's renting and just make that part of the deal. Hey, you're in control of plowing, shoveling, you're in control of lawn care, you're in control of the heating, everything, because they're the only one on that property. It's not like you have to share anything. So that is one nice thing. And the way that the tenant looks at it is like, hey, this is basically my house. I'm the only one on this property. So of course they don't own the property, but it makes it feel like that. So if they ever have to leave or want to leave, when they go look, chances are looking at the apartments that are sharing spaces, that single family looks a whole lot better. So you're going to be able to keep longer term tenants in there. Another nice thing about single families is kind of along the lines of inventory is it's easier to get out of than a multifamily. You're going to be able to list it and sell it just like a regular old single family. So as long as you don't have your tenants on a lease, that could make it hard to sell. If you have a year-long lease and you're trying to sell a single family, that's going to be a little tough. So make sure you kind of work around that when you're looking to sell. And the last pro that I did want to touch on was there is a couple possibilities with single family. Of course, you can just rent it out to a single tenant or a single family and just have them live there, or you could rent out per bedroom. This is always going to be more hands-on just because you're doing more work and renting more spaces. So if you had a 3-bedroom house, you could have 3 separate people living there collecting on 3 separate checks. It's going to involve a little bit more work, and it just could be hard because if you have a bunch of roommates, they have to like each other. So it can be a good situation if you're in like a college town to do college rentals, but then you get the downside that you have to deal with college kids. Airbnb, that could be a possibility. Again, this all depends where you're located and what the laws are about Airbnb. And again, that's way more hands-on than if you're just to place a tenant in there and let them be. So now for the cons of single family is on the purchase, yes, you have way more inventory to look at and to actually bid on, but you also have so many more buyers you're going to be competing against, especially in times right now where it's hard enough for someone to find a single family house. They're putting in bid after bid after bid, even with interest rates. It's going to be so hard for you to be able to find a good deal that actually cash flows when so many people are just kind of making offers off of emotion and just wanting that house compared to you as an investor that's buying it for a numbers basis. So it's going to be a little bit different a game there, and it could be hard to actually find something. Granted, there's going to be a lot more inventory for what you're looking for, but finding the deal is going to be harder. And now I have 3 more cons, and they're kind of all numbers based. One, if you're renting to a single family, you only have 1 check. So you only get 1 check a month. It's going to be harder to get and scale cash flow on that because there's only so much room you can go up to because you only have that one thing you're renting. So it's just a little bit more difficult there. And it's going to take you longer to scale your whole investment portfolio in the long run. Because if you're only picking up 1 unit at a time, granted you're buying a house, but you're only picking up 1 unit, it's just going to take that much longer to scale. So it's just a little bit harder because you're not going to have as big of an upside as you would for a multifamily. So let's just go right into multifamilies and go to the pros of the multifamilies. So the first one I'm going to jump into is it's easier to scale because you are buying 2 to 4 units at a time. So while on single family, you're buying 1, 1, 1, 1, after 4 purchases, you have 4 units. If you buy multifamilies, you could have a duplex, you could have a fourplex, you could have a triplex, and maybe another triplex. That's like 12 units compared to the 4 units that you have single family. So it's definitely easier to scale if you're buying more units per purchase. With this comes along with higher cash flow possibilities. If you're buying a 2 or a 4 unit property and you're buying it where it's below market rent, to bump those up, you're going to see a way greater return than if you're dealing with a single family that's below rent and bumping up just a little bit. But chances are that's not getting rented because a ton of people don't rent single families, at least where I'm from. I'm on the East Coast in New Hampshire. Doesn't really make sense unless you're doing bedrooms out here. So that's one reason I do like multifamilies a lot more. Again, I'm a little biased towards multifamilies. I'm in them. I own 2 duplexes and love them. I personally don't think I'd ever buy a single family to use as an investment property unless it was college rentals. But do I want to deal with college rentals? And if I did, I'd rather just buy a duplex or a triplex and do it still that. At least you have more scale there. Another pro is you're probably going to have less competition while looking to purchase because 2 to 4 units is kind of an awkward area for some people, especially investors, because one, a bunch of the pool of home buyers are going to be single families just looking for a regular old house. And then you also got investors, but the 2 to 4 unit is kind of like a bridge for investors to get to that 5+ commercial unit investing. So like once those investors get into that 5 unit plus, very rarely are you going to see them buying a 2 to 4 unit because they know the scalability of the 5+, that it's a waste of time for them to do the 2 to 4 units. So you're going to see less competition here. And the other nice thing about the multifamily property is this also applies to the single family property. I just kind of forgot to mention it in that part, is if you are a first-time home buyer and this is your first house, you can use an FHA loan even with a multifamily property. So you can get into a multifamily property with as little as 3.5% down. And the greatest thing about buying a multifamily, say you buy a duplex, you can count 75% of one of those sides of the duplex because you're going to have to live in one since it's your primary residence. But the other side, you can count 75% of that rent and apply it towards your debt to income ratio, which is what lenders base off how much you can purchase. So either your purchase price goes up or it's just going to be that much easier to afford your home because your tenant is going to be paying your mortgage. So that's my big reason why I love multifamily property so much. But it's huge, and it just is such a big thing that so many people miss because they are so drawn into that single family chase that they want to go that way. But if you just make the sacrifice up front, buy a couple of duplexes, it's going to pay off in the long run. But not everything's greener on the other side. So let's go into the cons of multifamily, right? First con, it can be more expensive to buy. I mentioned this when we were talking about single families. Again, this is strictly based on where you're out of, because I know in my market, yes, there are some duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes that are more money than a single family. But in a lot of cases, they're pretty reasonably right around the same area for like a first-time home buyer, $300,000 range can be the same thing with a duplex or a triplex, depending on where you're looking. So that is one thing. But in certain scenarios where like there's a certain city, Manchester, New Hampshire, that it's a lot more money to buy a 3-unit than to buy a single family. So it's just like really depends on where you are geographically and what you're going to be able to buy. Next con is you don't have as much liquidity as if you were to have a single family house. Of course, each one of these involves selling, but selling a single family house, especially one that's vacant, can go a lot quicker than having to sell a multifamily house, because you're looking for a more particular buyer to actually purchase your property when you sell a multifamily house. So it could be hard and you could be sitting on it. But when you're sitting, chances are you're still collecting rent. So as long as you bought it with the right numbers, you should still be making money, which is a good thing. Next is you have to, this is something that can be avoided, but it could be hard to separate utilities for the tenants, meaning if there's shared spaces of electrical, if there's not separate heating systems and all that, it could be something that you just can't even split it up. So you have to pay for it and charge higher rents. But it also could be avoidable when you're looking at multifamilies. Make that part of your criteria that it must have separate electric, it must have separate heating, it must have this and this, so that you can actually plan on how you want to invest in the way you want to set that up. So it's an avoidable con, but it could be a con. If you have one oil tank and one furnace and you have to heat the whole place, chances are you're going to have to include heat and then just charge a little higher rent and make the numbers work that way. And another con for multifamily investing is chances are you're going to have to do a little bit more upkeep and actually managing your property. Because with a single family tenant, again, you're probably going to be getting in a good, responsible, long-term tenant that's not going to leave and probably will do some repairs on their own, which probably isn't the best, but they might do it because, again, they're looking at it as their house. But with multifamily, you're probably going to get people who are in and out a little bit quicker. They might not be as good to your property because they don't look at it as their house, so they don't really care if there's holes in the walls. So it might be a little bit more hands-on. So that could be a con, but as long as you get your systems down and actually stick to those systems, you should be good. People just skip that part, and then that's where all the horror stories come from. Oh, I had horrible tenants. They did this and this to my property. But then you question them and be like, yeah, but what was your screening process? Well, what do you mean a screening process? Well, that's why you have shit tenants. So it's one of those avoidable cons. But all in all, those are the pros and the cons for each single family and multifamily investing. Personally, where I'm from in New Hampshire, I don't really see single family working that well and having that much of an upside. Multifamily is really the way to go. And even right now, with the way prices are and interest rates, it can be hard to work the numbers and actually make it a good investment. But you're either going to have to put 20 to 25% down to make it work, or you're like owner occupying a house hacking situation where you live in a unit, rent out the other unit and go that way, and then kind of work it into being a strict investment property. But with all that said and done, I hope this kind of gives a little clarification of which one you're kind of looking into and which one is best fit for you. Like, both of these are going to have to be managed, but single family is going to be easier to manage. Just straight up, it's going to be easier. You have less people to manage. But multifamily, you're going to have higher money coming in, probably greater cash flow, and a higher ceiling that you can actually limit out on versus a single family. You can only charge so much for that house. So with all that being said, I hope this kind of gave you a little bit of clarification. I hope it gave you some value. I hope it deserves that like and hitting that subscribe button, as I do release weekly videos related to real estate and real estate investing. I truly love real estate investing. So if you have any topics that you want me to talk about, feel free to drop them down below in the comments. I'll probably make a video out of it. If not, I'll at least make a reel and probably put it on that if it's kind of a shorter form thing. So follow me on my Instagram too. I post there every day of the week, and especially on my stories. I'm on there all the time. So I hope this video has helped you out, and I will catch you next time.